Meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I'm Paul Moore, chairperson. This is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton Mayor and City Council, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on rezoning, use permits, concurrent variance applications, the comprehensive land use plan, plan map, and other related plans, amendments to the zoning ordinance. Present this evening are Commissioner Fred Edwards, Commissioner George Ragsdale, Commissioner Jennifer Fletcher, myself, Paul Moore, Commissioner Curtis Mills, and Commissioner Joe Kramer. Let the record show that newly appointed Commissioner Chris Doty is not available this evening. He did advise us he was not going to be available tonight. We don't need to go through any of this other.
Did you want to do your Pledge of Allegiance?
We can. We don't really need to go through the rest of this. It has to do with the public hearing
Right.
part, since there's nobody in attendance this evening. Okay. Shall we all stand and do the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Robin, if you would, actually, there is no one present this evening for public comment. May I have a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment is closed. So motion made by Mr. Kramer and seconded by Mr. Edwards. And if you would sound the first item then, which is the minutes, please.
Okay. The first item is approval of action minutes from September 29, 2009 special called Planning Commission meeting. This was deferred from the December 16, 2009 Planning Commission meeting.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the minutes? Actually, we need to identify who can vote. Robin.
Mr. Chairman, I'll recuse myself. I was not here.
Okay.
Okay. The 29th, the people that were absent was Fred and Jennifer
Okay.
at
So
that meeting.
the rest of us can vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Did you get a motion?
We didn't get a
I thought I
motion.
did. I'm sorry.
I don't think so.
All right, may I have a motion for the minutes then, please? So I was thinking Freddie made a motion.
I move the minutes of September 29th meeting be approved as written.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm out on the 27th.
Me too.
Okay, so we've got, it'd be Fred, no George, no Jennifer, Paul, Curtis, Joe, you were or were not here then?
We're not.
Was not. So it's 3 of us for the 27th?
Yeah, 3 out of 4.
Okay, so may I have a motion?
I move we approve the action minutes of October 27, 2009 meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Is that you, Curtis?
There was. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved.
Okay, now who abstained? It was, anybody abstained?
It was,
Joe and me and Jennifer.
yep.
So 3, okay.
Okay. Robin, the next one is the one that you're taking off?
Yes, the next item, November 18, 2009, action minutes were actually approved at the December 16th, so we're removing that. Make a motion to remove that from the agenda.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
Move we approve the minutes of this December
Actually,
16th regular meeting.
They're being removed.
The
Pardon me?
18th.
November
Meeting.
18th. We're
I'm
removing
sorry,
it from the
November
agenda.
18th, I'm sorry.
Oh, didn't
I
know
was
we
just
had
saying
to
it was done.
Vote to remove them, that's already been done.
Right.
Doesn't require a motion?
Let's just do it, just to be
All right,
safe.
just to be safe. Okay, may I have a motion to remove that from the agenda, November 18th?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Okay, who had that one?
It was a motion made by George and seconded by Fred.
Okay, they were kind of together.
Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion is approved to remove the minutes of November November 18th.
Okay. The next item is approval of action minutes, December 16th, 2009, Planning Commission meeting.
Okay. Okay, I was not at that one.
I move for approval of the December 16th meeting minutes as written.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, before we vote, we have to determine who was here and who wasn't. I was not. Was everybody else present?
Curtis wasn't here.
Be
Okay, so
abstaining.
you and I will be abstaining. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay, so Curtis and Paul abstain. Motion carries by unanimous vote of the balance.
Okay. The approval of action minutes, January 5th, 2010, special call Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, so we had no George that night, correct? Everybody else
Right.
was here? Okay, may I have a motion?
Make a motion that we accept the minutes, special call meeting, January 5th, 2010.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Abstain.
Abstain, yeah.
We had one abstention. Okay.
Okay, I noticed we had some people come in. So the next item is the courtesy review of the updated Milton Tree Preservation Ordinance. But I just want to acknowledge the Shepherds. We were basically administratively deferring. I'm sorry? Okay, that's fine. We're going to have another item, and then it would be, basically there won't even be a vote. It's just administratively done, but.
I move we move the courtesy review of the tree ordinance to the bottom of the agenda and deal with the
Okay.
3 administrative removals first.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're moving item 10 to the bottom of the agenda.
Okay. I'll just sound these and state the fact. U09-03, 2880 Mountain Road by T-Mobile to obtain a use permit for a 140-foot tall monopole cell tower with an additional 4-foot lightning rod for a total of 149 feet, Article 19.4.7. This item has been administratively deferred to March 23rd, 2010, which is a Planning Commission meeting in March. Number 12 on the agenda, U09-04, 14495 Hopewell Road by T-Mobile to obtain a use permit for a 150-foot tall monopole cell tower with an additional 4-foot lightning rod for a total of 154 feet, Article 19.4.7. Again, this item has been administratively deferred to March 23rd, 2010. And thirdly, number 13, U09-05, 13302 New Providence Road by T-Mobile to obtain a use permit for a 150-foot tall monopole cell tower with an additional 4-foot lightning rod for a total of 154 feet, Article 19.4.7. This item has been administratively deferred to the March 23rd, 2010 Planning Commission meeting. And just as a note, there will be no, obviously, a council meeting in between, so there will be no public hearings until the March 23rd meeting.
Okay. And Robin, the purpose for the deferral is so that the city can do some additional preparation? Is that the
That's
bottom line?
correct, yes. And the intentions, I believe, of the city management is to try to obtain or retain a third-party expert to do some testing and research and scientific data to try to supplement the information we already have.
Okay. And we know that there was some testing done this last weekend with did the weather allow all 3 tests
I don't
to
think,
take
I got
place?
an email, it didn't work out really well.
Only one, I know.
I knew that they attempted the other, I got an email saying that they did attempt the other 2, but I don't know what the outcome were on the other 2 items.
And if those were not successfully conducted, what will happen next? Will they have to post a date to
I mean, I can speak to them. I'm sure they would be open to doing, well, I would assume if they weren't successful because of the weather. I mean, that's not an item that we require per our ordinance or anything. That's what they do as a due diligence. So I would be more than happy to communicate with them if it wasn't satisfactory for them to look at another date to do it. So I can't promise that they would, but we can definitely ask
Right.
them.
I would imagine that the public would be interested
Right.
in ensuring that that does take place, so those that were interested in seeing it this weekend would have a chance to do that, if we could make that
Yep.
request. If it's not mandatory, okay, but if it's a request that they're willing to comply with, so the public can participate, that would be great. Okay? So is a motion required to confirm that these are moved, or is it simply
It's
complete?
administratively done. So.
Okay.
All right, Robin, with the deferral date to the 23rd and the volume of data that we've already got on these 3 applications, when would you expect that we're going to get the results of the study information that you're looking for into our hands?
I'm hoping, I'll try to get it before a week, the actual staff report and the findings. So I think, again, it just depends on how quickly they can turn around the
Okay.
information, but we'll definitely try to get it to you as soon as possible.
Okay. I would propose that we should think about just planning for, at this point, a briefing meeting prior to that meeting. So at this point, you guys can check your calendars with this much lead time to ensure that we can plan ahead for and what do you guys feel? Is 5:30 the appropriate start time, or is it 6 o'clock the appropriate start time for that particular briefing meeting?
Is it 5:30?
I'd prefer 5:30 if we can all make that.
5:30.
Okay, so we'll all agree to a briefing meeting, Robin, on on the 23rd. Okay. All right, then would you, resend the next item, which is the courtesy review.
Okay. Next item is the courtesy review of the updated Milton Tree Preservation Ordinance. I did send out an email a little bit earlier, just explaining a little bit more of what the City Council in their December work session, they had started to review this, and they had made a decision as a council, not a formal vote, but informally, they requested that the Planning Commission and the Design Review Board review this, but basically with the parameters of having Mark Law do a comparison of what the current ordinance states, the main points, and what the proposed ordinance will be proposing. And then to receive comments back from the Planning Commission as well as the Design Review Board. So that was the task that the City Council gave the Planning Commission.
Okay, so it's not a rewrite like we endured on the historic preservation ordinance as an example. This is simply a review of the documents. You guys, Mark, and you're going to point out the differences between the
Correct,
last
and-
and this.
There's a
What you have.
handout in front of you as well, so that he'll go through it.
And I went through it, and it looks to be pretty much in order. I don't,
No, this.
The green and.
no, I went through this.
Oh.
In the ordinance itself. I didn't have the comparison
Right, we just
sheet.
got that to you.
But, okay, great. Look forward to hearing the review.
Okay, thank you. What's that? Sure. Okay, if you want, if everybody has this copy right here. Yes, what we're basically doing is just really going back and forth, old and new. I just go with what's in the new one. And if there's any questions, how that compares to the other one, we'll do that. But one of our goals is, in this rewrite is we are trying to preserve the trees in the city, in Milton. And we thought, the community felt like there was much of a problem with the residential removal of trees as there is the development removal of trees. So that is one thing we added
we jump that far, under the authority and applicability section,
Mhm.
when I read that, Mark, what struck me is it does give reference to, single-family homes, detached homes, duplex dwellings, inclusions, additions, renovations, and alterations to existing single-family detached duplex dwellings. It doesn't address anything, it doesn't, it's silent on apartments, condos, other kinds of structures. Is there a reason that it does define some and is silent on others?
They don't require land disturbance permits or building permits.
That's right, that's under the LDPs.
Okay.
Government Land Service Permit.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
on, back, Mark, up on section 1, in the copy that we have, it says, under purpose, that it is not the intent of this ordinance to regulate individual properties. But then when you're saying the new says, it is the intent to ensure that individual properties retain the required tree density.
It's not, what this saying is not the intent to regulate individual properties where it does not require land disturbance or a tree removal permit. So if somebody just want to take out 2 trees of a certain size,
The 8-inch, which is later on in there.
that's correct. So anything that would set off a tree removal permit, land disturbance permit, building permit, anything like that, then that's when this comes into play.
So, okay, so that clarifies it later on that they can, an individual remove, I think, up to six year that are not any larger than 8 inches.
That is correct.
Okay.
And I'll try to.
Okay, well, that's fine. I saw
put
that
that
old and then the new that was, it said it is not the intent, so that's what, okay.
I know that the purpose of this is not to get into construction,
Yeah,
and that's fine, but, you know, without seeing the old ordinance side by side, I'm not sure it was added. That same paragraph that Paul pointed to, the authority and applicability, there's a sentence that says, "No clearing, grubbing, grading, or other removal of existing vegetation that may affect the health of existing tree coverage may occur until it's determined that the proposed developments in conformance." The first part of that would seem to apply to everything, but then it says, until it's determined the proposed development, which seems to bring it into the context of only development, but that's not clear at all. So I'm
Okay.
not sure what the intent is.
And I'm sorry, where was that?
The last sentence
Last
under
sentence.
authority and applicability.
Okay.
It starts with no clearing.
Is it the intent that no clearing, blah, 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 may occur when a land disturbance permit is required? I mean, are we still talking in that context?
I understand that is not a good description right there. So we'll have to look at this again. Is there any recommendation you have on that?
Well, no, I mean, I'm not sure what I understood what the intent was. My concern when I read that was that we were going to try and now regulate clearing, grubbing, grading, and other removal of existing vegetation anytime it affects the health of existing tree coverage.
Well,
And
as long
that-
as it's under the act of the conditions noted in the lead part of that paragraph, right?
But that's my point. It doesn't say that.
Okay.
So I was just trying to make sure. Again, I don't want to get us bogged down. But I think that's an important one only because it's in this authority and applicability section.
Okay, I'll make sure we get that clarified and some understanding on that. Any other comments for the first
Not in there.
section 1 through 4?
Sorry, Mark. How are we reviewing this? I apologize. You said section 1 through 4. Are we going through it in
Well,
batches?
I'm just kind of going down the right side of this right here.
Okay.
Just explaining what's going to be in the
He's
new.
grouped it into larger sections. So 1 through 4 is basically the beginning through page 6 of our document.
So 1 through 4 is 1 through 4?
No, and there's Roman numerals on here, correct?
No, I-
Mark's
There was a-
Mark's referring to this, when he says 1 through 4.
Yeah, I
What you
got it.
have.
It was a joke. I mean, 1 through 4, I get it. Roman, I can actually convert to Roman numerals too.
You're smarter than you were last time you were here. You've been
No, I
schooling
just
up.
wanted to understand. I didn't realize you were going through this summary document. I was reading it, but I thought you were just talking. Sorry.
So did you have anything in addition then, basically?
Not on,
pages
not on.
0
I mean,
through,
I have some general questions, and they piggyback onto Commissioner Ragsdale's email before. I'm not really clear about what we're doing with this, and I'm still smarting a little bit from that historic preservation debacle. We spent hours and hours going through that in blinding detail, really wordsmithing, finding logic problems in there. I mean, I'm not trying to be critical, but that wasn't our job. And did you write this?
This right here?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, this.
Yes.
The report? Okay, if
What-
you wrote it, it's a work of art.
Yes,
But,
with the tree committee.
I beg your pardon?
In conjunction with the tree committee, we put this report together.
Well, Mark, you know I would fall on my sword for you, so I'm not being critical, but like, there's typos in here. They didn't even run spell check on it, and I,
Got that too.
not that we gotta be overly concerned about cosmetics, but
Right.
Yes, we do. That just, it's just not right, you know?
Anyway.
It creates an image of all of us if we've got things out there like that. And
so that was just a general comment. I had the benefit of having worked with Mark on a project pre-Milton, so I got smart on some of this he educated me on this some years ago. So I got some technical questions, but I can hold those till we get to the right section, if that's okay.
I assume Ken has not reviewed this at all?
Has the city attorney reviewed?
No, we had submitted an earlier one.
I
to
think
the
it is. There were
attorney,
two
and
of
he
them. I
never
thought
got
it might
back
have been
to us. That was
a different
That was
version.
previous to this one. We had a couple,
I didn't,
several
I
different
didn't, I
ones that
just
we were
looked
looking
through
at.
it. First couple of pages, it looked like.
And no, Ken is not, we were waiting until we, everything a little more finalized before we submitted that to Ken.
So I think, but I don't believe we got Curtis's first question.
Yeah, the objective, and I mean, you asked the question, and I think you answered it, Robin, and I mean, it's just for an initial reaction, or just to start to socialize the issues?
I think it's both. I mean, when I would listen to the tape and got kind of trying to understand what was their intent, I think it was they wanted you to review it. I think that they wanted comments back from you as a body about it. I mean, I don't think their intent was to do the wordsmithing and totally change it. I think,
I agree with Curtis 100% that that's not the intent, but I still think it begs the question, who's going to do it? Because it needs to be done.
Wasn't there someone else that was asked to review it?
the design review board.
But it's not their job either.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And from a legal standpoint, I mean, Ken or other staff members of the legal team should have the responsibility for some of the cleanup in terms of making the I's get dotted and T's get crossed.
I disagree. We shouldn't be paying the city attorney
Well-
to get the kind of review that this needs at this
No, well,
point.
hear me out. So and what I was saying is that the balance of my comment was going to be, if there are structural things where we think that it's inconsistent with the intent of Milton in our protection of our tree ordinance, that's where I think we need to weigh in. Now, in reading it today, I didn't find that. I didn't find anything personally to be consistent with what I understand your intent, Mark, to be, or what I've known our tree ordinance intentions to be from dealing with a number of meetings historically and the spirit of which this was intended. I thought it was actually, other than finding a couple of typos and a couple of structural things, I thought it was actually pretty much in keeping with my understanding of the overall intent for preservation of trees in Milton. That part was great. So the very few things that I'm going to add to comment on tonight are going to be just little catches, because I thought the content was actually pretty darn good for a change. So,
definitely, I think the intent is there's gonna be some more vetting of it, through these two boards, as well as going back to the tree preservation board, as well as the council wants to look at it again in detail, and so it's not like it's gonna go next week to get approved. There's
Right.
still gonna be some vetting of it.
Well, this, unlike some of the other ordinances that have been before us, is in much better shape to start. And I'm really pleased with that. But I think maybe going forward, we should get maybe a little bit more definitive direction from them if they are gonna ask us to do it, rather than just say, oh, let's have the planning commission do a courtesy review. What is that, let's ask them further, what does that really mean? Curtis?
So, did I understand you to say that the major driver behind the redo is to include residential, to make sure, I don't know if I picked that up in the document or from a comment that you made.
No, that wasn't the driving force for the redo. We were just trying to make the Fulton County ordinance, the one we adopted, just really kind of covered a wide range of.
That's where I was going with it, because
Yeah.
it says old, and my question was gonna be, did we adopt Fulton County's, and is that really the baseline? And were there any differences in Milton's adopted plan, Fulton County's plan, and what you were doing here? And we'll talk about recompense later. Just general questions, whether you sort of tweaked those rules for any reason for Milton, or whether the same standards apply.
A lot of it is the same. We did tweak that to apply more toward our concerns up here in Milton. So, we followed the previous guideline, and we did make some changes that we felt like would benefit.
When we get to that section, maybe you could point out a couple of those, just as examples. I'd be curious
Okay.
to know. Thanks.
Okay. All right, Mark, would you like to continue then, please? Are there any other questions at the moment? Okay, Mark?
Okay, and on the section 5, exemptions. So, those are just areas that would be exempt from having to apply to, we would be exempt from the tree ordinance. Commercial nurseries or farms, utility work issues.
I have a question on section 5, just want to make sure the intent's clear. In B, I'm struggling a little bit with the process. It says that an exception is if we have a hazard tree that poses an immediate threat to life or property. Immediate threat is a not very well-defined term, but be that as it may, it says the party removing the tree can contact city arborist within 7 days after the removal for approval with pictures and/or a written report from a certified arborist stating the hazards of the tree, which seems to imply that you had that other arborist there before you took it out. That's what how does the report after the fact state the hazards of the tree after the tree's been removed, is my question.
Well, it just gives us some documentation there that.
But how does somebody coming after the fact define what the hazards of the tree were if the tree's already down?
Let's see what you're saying there. We're trying to find some way to document what's happening, because what's going to happen is once the tree is gone, everybody's going to say it was a hazard. And so we're just trying to find some way we can get some documentation on that. If we keep getting I don't know how to address this, a report from Joey's Arborist Service, and everything happens to be a hazardous tree, no documentation, stuff like that. Now, where we go with it from there, I don't know. But
It's not an uncommon way to deal with documenting hazardous situations. I mean, by definition, it occurs sometimes without the luxury of administrative approval, and so you got to have a way to capture it after the fact. At least I've seen that in several other situations.
I guess my point, Curtis, so is I'd rather, for continuity's sake, I'd rather just defer and let the city arborist make that determination after the fact. I mean, my concern here was that we're opening it up to a third party to do that.
That's
And-
yeah, valid. What do you think, what do you think of that, Mark?
I think that's
Is that-
acceptable.
Is that an onerous responsibility?
No, but, because what we could easily do there, if, anything turned around and our workload is just, we were just overwhelmed, then I could possibly hire an outside third-party consultant or something,
Yeah,
somebody.
that would work too, a third party appointed by you.
Right.
Yeah.
My concern is you're
Under
gonna
your
get a
control, that's
wide
valid.
spectrum of
Yeah.
what's determined otherwise, unless you got one lens.
Right. Yeah. That works for me.
And
Good-
Mark, are you-
Good point.
And the likelihood of this happening is really probably, or the reason that this particular section exists is probably because of like ice storm, where you're gonna have a large number of trees down, or a large windstorm, or a large number of trees going down. One particular tree here and there obviously would not call for, unless maybe it was, maybe a weekend thing where a tree fell on a power line and it's posing a danger to family. Is it written for all of those, that, both ends of the spectrum, the single tree on a single lot where it's falling against the power line to the other end of the spectrum, which is a major storm, or is it just exist?
I think then, after the discussion, the meeting, the intent here is, eventually we want to have a tree inventory for the city. And we want to know where the specimen trees are, certain size trees and everything. And that would be a way we could keep a record also of those trees, of our tree losses too. And I think that's one reason they were looking at that, was trying to capture the trees that we lose through ice storms, through damage, things like that. So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Well,
but that's-
not yet, but you're gonna get there.
Okay.
Because what I'm saying is, the reason that you would allow for this particular point B, where you're allowing after the fact, examination of the situation to
Mhm.
take place. I can only think of two examples personally where that may come into play. And if there's more, I'd like to better understand that. One would be potentially a weekend when you're not gonna have an arborist on call to go on a Saturday night, and a tree fell over, it's posing a danger because of like I said, because of a power line.
Right.
So you obviously would, they would probably want to take action immediately to reduce the risk of any imminent danger that way.
Mhm.
Or in a large-scale event where you've got an ice storm or a windstorm or a number of trees are down, you can't possibly get to everywhere. You're again going to impose the ability to do this with third-party or after-the-fact approval because of the volume of trees. So is that the spectrum? Is that the scale? One tree on a weekend where an arborist is not available to ice storm and there's multiple trees down? And both, it's here for that scale?
We definitely for the one tree, I think we were looking at that. We weren't looking at mass. That was not considered there.
Okay.
That would be kind of overwhelming there if we did have a major storm.
Yeah.
And go through and have to get submittals or something for each tree that was removed.
Okay.
I would, again, we're not trying to wordsmith here, but I would argue that the way this is written, hazard tree is defined down in G, and a hazard tree is one that's likely to fail or portions are likely to fail under mild environmental or man-made stress. To me, a high wind would be mild environmental, right? So if I determine that I've got a 50-foot pine tree next to my house that looks like it's going to fail if the wind picks up and fall on my house, I can determine that that's an immediate threat to my property. And even though it hasn't fallen over yet, theoretically it would fit under the definition and I could take it down, right? Now, I mean, ideally, it'd be nice to have Mark come out and say, yeah, I agree, let's take it down. But if it's tonight and the wind's blowing up and I don't want the tree to fall on my house, I'm probably not going to find anybody to take it down either. But, I think there's a little bit of flexibility here, which I think there should be, as long as Mark's kind of the lens on what's approved after the fact or not.
Well, I think the addition of an approved third party
Yeah, I agree.
is an important
I agree.
part of that.
Appointed by the city. Or
And
approved by the city.
Approved by the city.
Yeah.
So that maybe there is a list of tree removal companies that have met a set of parameters that you guys have established.
Well, that's down, it's
So
in
that-
here.
Yeah, so that then in that off-hour situation, that, that third party is a qualified third party based on a series of criteria you've established that they have cleared the hurdles on
Mhm.
and aren't gonna be just looking for a buck to take a tree down.
Right.
That they're gonna be compliant with the expectations that you have set for them, and then in that compliance, they would maybe walk up to that tree and say, you know, I really am uncomfortable taking this one down without the city arborist taking a look at it.
Mhm.
I'll be happy to do it after it got his approval, but I can't take it down today because it hasn't met the standards that have been set for me to take that tree down, Mr. Homeowner, so,
And that's what we run into frequently.
yeah, I bet you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was there any consideration given to non-native species trees? Invasive species trees?
Usually, a lot of times your non-natives are gonna be landscaped trees, people that, and, you talking about like cherry trees and things like that?
I'm thinking
or-
more like slash pine or something like that, that basically displaced the longleaf pines.
You mean like a tree that acts like kudzu?
Well, right now, we still address the pine trees, and that they're still, we do still enforce those, of a certain size. That's an ongoing issue right there, is pine trees. Seems like 90% of people don't like the pines.
But the recompense factor is far less valued. I'm not saying that right, but the conversion to replacement doesn't treat them the same as a big dogwood or a, if I remember right, or a big oak or maybe a hickory.
Well, mainly because there's, the requirement of the specimen tree is just smaller, so it's 24 inches, going to require less recompense plantings than what a 20.
I thought the softwood. Anyway, we don't need to get into that. I thought I remembered the softwoods requiring less on a per diameter inch basis, but maybe
I mean, it
that's
would
not right.
equate to lesser trees being planted or recompense, just because the size is smaller.
Which is the, basically the valuation for the tree.
Any-
Okay, any other comments on that section B, or should we allow Mark to continue?
I'm not sure where we are.
We're on, under 5 exemptions. We're looking at 5 B
On the second
on
page.
page 6 of that document.
You're deliberately trying to confuse me by switching back to the report now?
Well, we're looking at this, but, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's
Table.
there's no B on here, so it's in the report.
Okay, so the prohibitive acts, that's just a general thing, is that do help the health of the tree. If we can eliminate those, that's by attaching things to trees, as far as nailing anything into the tree.
I have a comment there, Mark.
Yes, sir.
And again, it's going to sound like construction, but one of the things that's not consistent throughout here is that we've got kind of definitions kind of sprinkled. They're not all in one place. Some are in the definition section, some are not. One of the things we've not done in here is when we define terms, they should be capitalized throughout the document so that we know that that's what we're talking about. To me, topping trees is not a bad thing if it's done right. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, at least up north, that's a common practice because they just get overgrown. I mean, topping is the term that's used. I mean, topping is defined in here to be something that permanently disfigures the tree, although the word permanently is not there. But it bothers me a little bit to say that it should be unlawful to hire somebody to top any street tree, park tree, or tree on public or private property. That's fine, but it says any tree requires a condition of zoning or permitting. That, as I read that literally, it says I can't have my trees topped if I want to. As long as I am doing it in a way that doesn't permanently disfigure the tree and meets all the criteria, why can't I have that done?
Okay. One thing, do we consider this, do we look at our ordinance as something to try to protect the citizens also? I mean, I don't mean this as facetiously, but.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay, topping is not an acceptable practice.
Okay.
I mean, it's, the International Society of Arboriculture, everything, it is not good for the tree.
But, and I'm not arguing with you, because I don't know what I'm talking about, but I have a feeling what I'm talking about for topping and what you're talking about for
Yeah.
topping are two different things. That's my
Okay.
point.
What
It's like-
exactly is topping?
Topping is cutting back a certain percentage of the tree back to a stub. We're basically cutting all the, well, the thing.
You think about it like up in the Big Canoe or LJ area, when you've got somebody's built a new home,
Sure.
and they're looking for a vista, and they built a home in a treed parcel, and they want to have a view of the valley below.
Well,
Everything below a certain height of their deck, that could be 30 feet up in the air, they top the trees below that in the sight line, so they get this incredible vista. So in the meantime, you've ruined the visual effect for everybody else around you.
which
You've got a
I'm-
great
Can I see that?
vista.
Which I'm all for.
This tree right here.
For?
No, I'm all
is
for
why a
preventing
lot of
that.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
This one right here is why a lot of people will top the trees, because tree companies will tell them it invigorates growth. Topping bushes, flowers, stuff like that, yes, that invigorates the growth. But a tree, it invigorates growth, but in an unnatural sense. And you see that picture at the bottom right corner, that's what happens. It provides decay.
See, my point, for example, if I wanted to have somebody shape my pear tree,
Mhm.
and shape it, meaning not just this way, but shape it all the way down, as long as it's not permanently disfiguring that, to me, that's topping.
Okay.
That's my point.
Okay.
Unless we have a clear definition of that, we're gonna tell people that they can't do something, and I absolutely agree that is something we shouldn't allow.
Okay.
But what's
Okay.
interesting is, and to cite a live example, that you
Yeah.
probably,
Well, I top my crepe myrtles every year.
but that's a bush, right?
Well, I know, but I mean, that's
But
my
the guy, for example, who, if you come out of the golf community in White Columns and turn right to go south on Freemanville,
right.
that large home that's set back, the
Right,
yellow,
right.
is the reconstruction.
Right.
He basically topped, by this definition,
Correct.
all of his Bradford pears
Right.
that line his driveway.
Right,
It was pretty unsightly for about a year and a
but
half.
it wasn't permanent disfigure.
But now they're
They look
back
great.
and they're gorgeous.
Yeah.
So I don't know,
Well-
how do you balance that?
Bradford pear is different. That's a different story there. But
Yeah,
Well,
but that's what I have in my mind. I
Many
think about
species.
topping to me is unacceptable, and I think about a vista clearing.
Hmm.
That particular instance where he saved, I don't know if it saved them, but they were struggling trees, and he probably had, what would you say, George?
20 of
20
them
of
at
them?
least, yeah.
And 20 of them survived, and they are back to, it was pretty unsightly for a while, but it was a tree-lined driveway that has now come back where they're not so overgrown and so horrible that he didn't take them out of the ground, you have to start over.
I'm not arguing at all with what you're saying, because
Okay.
I don't know enough to, and I certainly would defer to you. All I'm saying is I'm using this as an example where I think we gotta be clear about what we're saying when we use defined terms, and topping a tree, or tree topping is something we've defined in here. You know, and at the risk of not doing what I said, or doing what I said I wouldn't do, I mean, I'll give you another example. If I look at the definition of caliper,
Mhm.
I would ask anybody here to tell me what caliper means based on the definition that's there. It's a standard for trunk measurement for new plantings. Doesn't tell you what caliper is. What is caliper?
In one instance, it's a tool, a caliper.
Yeah, but
Measures-
in
Yeah,
this case,
that's what I'm
isn't
saying.
it
Yeah.
to measure the diameter of
Yeah,
the tree?
right, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
It just, never mind.
See, I think these are good suggestions, and I think that's the point of the council, was to have a third, fourth, fifth set of eyes.
But there's a lot of that kind of stuff in here, and it's, you know, the intent here is absolutely right, but you know as well as I do that people want to get around this are gonna find all these holes and use them to their advantage, so.
I have to agree as far as like, defining. I'll be honest with you, I don't have a clue about trees. And it would be, it would make things a lot easier, and exactly, I mean, there are loopholes, and people are gonna.
Oh, yeah.
So let's stop for a second and just say, Robin, if we're likely to bump into this kind of stuff, and we know that we have spent some pretty tough hours on this kind of stuff, is is this where it should reside, or is this not where it should reside?
Well, you know,
We probably
we need
should
a
have some
generic,
discussion
we
about
need, the city, not we, the city needs a generic process for vetting these things to the point, you know, it's no more Mark's job to write the ordinance than it is ours. I mean, it needs somebody who's got ordinance writing capability, because there's, you know, even if you don't even understand what the content is, there's a certain skill related to writing ordinances that these things are lacking, is my point. And it's not our job, as Curtis said, it's not Mark's job, it's not the design review board's job, and it's certainly not the city council's job to do that.
Right.
And we can't afford to pay the city attorney to do it.
Right, so that being said, is it a third party that gets farmed out to at a, you know, agreed to rate, or is it somebody that resides within city staff that does that? I don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah.
Let Robin do it.
Yeah. Within city staff.
Do you have any suggestions, or?
Well, I was just
as a
gonna
third, as a new
actually
person?
ask a question, and I'm Lynn Tully, by the way, for those who don't know me, I'm the new community development director.
Sorry.
Well, then
That's all
you're
right.
gonna write it.
Yeah, I knew that was
You did.
coming.
Community development means ordinance development.
You didn't realize that.
Well, what I'm wondering is, from what I'm hearing, it's as much format as it is content.
We've bumped
Is that
to
what-
both.
Okay, so format, I think we as staff can find a way to fix. You know, if you're looking for specific format in each of the ordinances and a similarity between those formats, you know, so that they're consistent across each ordinance, I think that, you know, we can provide that. But if it's content and logic and, you know, yes, we'll catch some of that. We're not gonna catch it all, because we'll have read it 12 times, and the more times you read it, the more it looks the same. So, you know, it's always gonna take a fresh set of eyes. I'm sorry.
My concerns would be enforceability, which is what I think you really were after, not form.
I don't care about
Substance,
form.
yes,
I don't
but-
care about form.
Right, form, yeah, that's
I mean,
not.
although I will admit, I would like them all to look
Yeah.
alike.
Well, I think it
Agreed.
is important to have some standardization, and to the point that you made earlier, George, to
Let
put
Curtis-
the definitions
let
up
Curtis finish
front.
his point. I cut him
we,
off.
you know, we should do that.
The Rodney Dangerfield of the planning commission world. Enforceability, but I mean, we got a jump start down the learning curve with a Mark or a Robin, you know, in her case, and I mean, I think, you know what the issues are. I mean, I think we start out with an A minus, assuming you're driving content. You know, I think we start out with an A minus, and then we're buffing and polishing, and that may not be right in every case. I mean, there's things that you may not have had to deal with, but dealing with Fulton County in this area as it's evolved and developed and so on and so forth, I mean, I kind of think we're down the curve, but enforceability would be my concern, and that's what you were getting at with the lack of definition, or things, calipers so obvious to you, you go, I mean, I know, you know, not everyone knows what caliper, but I mean, some of these things are so obvious to you or a professional that, anyway, enforceability is all I care about. Don't care about form. Consistency would be good, but, and did the committee, and I know a few of these folks, but, I don't know all of them, did the committee write this or review it? Because I would think that they should have given it a pretty darn hard gut check before it was released to the public. And knowing you, I would think that you would have wanted them to do that.
Well, I mean, they made comments, and I honestly did not check. I thought I had all the spelling checked, but we made some changes here and there. Guess some of those got passed, but the committee did review this, but I don't think that's what they were looking for at that time. When they were reviewing, I think they were looking at content. I don't think they were necessarily paying so much attention to the format or spelling, because the content was such an issue in some areas.
Yeah.
That's where we spent all our time. That's what we batted back and
Well,
forth.
to Paul's point, I mean, I think my sense was the content was pretty good. I mean, I'm no expert. I mean, I know what a tree is, so I've got one up on Jennifer there, but I'm not a technician. But my sense was the content was there. I was just commenting and piggybacking on George's question, what's our objective here? You know, why are we looking at this? What are we supposed to accomplish? What do you want to accomplish with the review? And it's, again, still smarting from that historic preservation. You weren't here then, but
What's that?
holy cow. You know, if you missed it, you missed it over about a 9-month window, and it seemed like, anyway.
And it's,
Not to digress, but what I'm smarting more from with that one is the fact that after we did all that,
Yeah, right.
it went back to the committee.
Insulting.
Who was here for every
The whole-
discussion we
for
had.
every discussion, that's
And-
right.
And then
And
they
from what
found
I
things that were
understand,
unacceptable.
they are recommending some changes.
Is
you know.
a complete, I mean, anyway.
and it's still
Anyway.
not approved.
No, of course not.
Well, I do have one particularly substantive comment I'd like to make, and that's in section 12.
We'll
if
judge
I
that after
could.
you make it.
Huh?
So we'll judge that after you make it.
Well, section 12A says any person aggrieved or affected by any provisions of this order should be liable for up to a maximum of $1,000 per violation per day. Why are we finding the person that's aggrieved by it?
Yeah, section 12.
The person that's aggrieved by it is the person that's damaged by it, you know.
Right here. Very first sentence.
Again, that was one, I think, a lot of this in these latter sections were, I can't believe that was what was in Fulton, but, some of these latter sections were just carried over from Fulton that seemed very applicable. And then we just moved those on over to this and did not focus on it so much there.
Okay.
That's just, needs to be,
Right.
I mean,
Needs
to
to
me,
be cleaned
part
up.
of the problem here is a lot of cases, I think we've used too many words. All we want to say is any person who violates the ordinance is going to be liable for a maximum fine of $1,000 a day, right?
and then related to that, if I'm not jumping ahead on your Delta sheet, why was that changed to not to exceed 2 times the amount of the payment required?
Two-time. Let me see an S.
Pardon?
References two-time. Just kidding. They're missing an S in the typo.
There's not, there's an S on mine.
And recompense is spelled.
Now, where do you, Paul's back in the
I
ordinance.
know.
Back in the ordinance.
He's
Oh.
playing.
I'm playing Curtis.
Yeah. The idiot savant. So if we're not there yet, I'll wait. I was just curious, because that's the kind of thing I'd be looking for. That's a fundamental change to something that could become very painful for a violator, and this puts a cap on it and stops the pain. And so I'm curious about what thinking was behind that.
Well, doesn't B also negate A? Because if it's not to exceed 2 times the amount of the payment required for recompense, which is also misspelled.
I'm sorry, where did you jump ahead to?
We're still in 12.
Oh, okay.
In B also recompense is misspelled. But if B is not to exceed 2 times the amount of the payment required from recompense, and the recompense is only going to be, say it's $2,000, but the offense in A is $6,000 because so you've fallen back to $2,000. You've got a really meaty fine that's going to put a bite into somebody and have an impact on them, and it's completely negated by B with the 2 times the amount reference.
Well, not to muddy it further, but it wasn't clear to me whether these things were in addition to recompense or whether recompense was considered to be the fine.
I think that's what we were looking at there is the recompense was going to be the fine, and then, well, the recompense, if they have to plant, the $2,000 worth of trees for the removal of that specimen tree. If it's removed illegally, it's double, so it'd be $4,000.
But are they fined $1,000 a day until they actually do that?
I think it was
No,
per day of offense.
Right.
That could be crazy, but per day, that's the way I understand that.
It's not, if they take out a tree, it's gone, there's nothing they can't do, we can't keep writing them each day that tree is gone.
Wasn't that what this says? Isn't that what A says? Is that you can keep finding them? It's, every day is a new day, according to this.
That each calendar
And
day
each calendar
violation.
day shall be constitute a violation. And as
Yeah.
such, it's $1,000 fine per day.
Yeah.
So you you knock a tree down last Monday and it's this Monday, so you got seven days, that's $7,000 worth of fines. Well, if it only is gonna cost me $2,000 to do the recompense to that, and it's not, it can't exceed 2 times that, so it's $4,000, I've already lopped off $3,000 of the potential fine. The $7,000 per day is now $4,000. So
But to Mark's point, I mean, once the tree's gone, it's gone. The per day fine just doesn't seem to fit in this context.
well, it sure would make
It
them
was
think
not
about
intended-
taking it down in the first place. If you knew you were gonna face a $1,000 fine per day, you didn't have any backup plan
But the, you know,
to do the recompense.
We don't have the vista issues here that you do on the coast or in the mountains, so I'm not sure how important it is, but I know one situation that I was involved in, someone systematically drilled holes in the base of up to 100 trees, pumped in a herbicide, carved a stick, twig, stuck it in the hole so it would camouflage it, let them die. Once they died, declared they were a hazard, cut them down for a view. And it was a major league, I mean, when it was over, you could see it from a satellite, you know. And the numbers on that one were staggering because it was the per day of offense thing, and it went back, you know, you got satellite aerial views that show this from outer space, and you can see what had happened. But anyway, that's my only exposure, and that's why I thought that it had to be so potentially painful that it would be a deterrent. But in our case, I'm not sure it matters.
Maybe we do this with section 12 tonight, Mark, is we obviously we've got some concern about it. I don't think any of us has the expertise to bring conclusion to that for you. We just ask that you review that and give it your expertise to maybe just add some additional thought time to that to see if it is what you intended or if it's in conflict between A and B. And
The intent here, break down the $1,000 today was more, I think, for the other violations such as the removal of the tree protection fence, encroaching to buffers, things like that, where, hey, you need to fix this now. You can fix the tree that's taken out. You know, you can fix the tree safe fence. You can fix that.
But not
not tree removal itself.
Right.
or ask forgiveness instead of permission, and if I cut this thing down, there's nothing they can do.
Well, for instance, I mean, it's, again, when you cut down a specimen pine, let's say illegally, 24-inch caliber pine trees, right now, it's considered a specimen. The recompense for that tree would be $7,000. If you ask permission to take down that pine tree, it'd be a $7,000 recompense. If you take it down illegally, then it's $14,000.
All right, well, that's some serious.
That's an
getting-
expensive pine tree.
Yeah, that'll get somebody's attention.
Mm.
Okay, well, that's a good example. Thanks for adding that.
As long as we're in,
That's what
as long
we-
as we're in this section, I mean,
Oh,
because I
that's
think what
right.
we're recommending is this section needs to be looked at. Section C is a little troubling too, in that it says each offense will be tried in Milton Municipal Court, which means, as written, that the one you just described is, they're all gonna go to court.
That's not, that would not be the case.
So May.
I mean, we,
May-
yeah.
may.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
May,
hope
May,
we,
that's right,
I hope
May.
none of them have to go to court, because people just pay the fines and that's the end of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, just change the rule.
Yeah.
Okay. Have we beaten up 12 enough to move on? All right, Mark?
Okay, on certificate of occupancy, that's more of an inspection type thing. It's either they meet the requirements set forth or they don't get their COs. They have an option of placing a bond if they still have something outstanding. Protection for care and care for public trees.
Mark, back in that
Yes, sir.
13B, assuming that TCO refers to a temporary certificate of occupancy,
Mhm.
is that defined anywhere?
No.
No, it is not. Okay. Okay, in section 13, the protection and care for public trees. We're applying for, become a Tree City USA, and that is one thing that they require that be in our ordinance, is that we have something stating that we're going to protect the city trees. And this, I mean, I was saying, you know, the right-of-ways, city parks, things like that, that they will be protected or have to have permits, or go through the proper channels to do any work on a city tree.
Okay, you aware there's typos in that section too?
So what was added, just C or all three of those sections?
All three, A, B, and C.
I didn't read it for every word, but C, the second line, be lawful for any person to engage in any activity in private property.
Drop on down as described on O-N, I-O-N's in,
There we go.
but I don't.
Yeah. what is-
But
It's piling on now.
Yeah. What's that?
Mark wants, let's
Yeah.
cut him some slack.
Yeah.
He gets it.
All right, are we, and I hadn't a chance to read this. On that last sentence in C, if for the damage to pay a fine of up to $1,000 per tree damaged. But didn't we say before it was $1,000 per day? Not up to,
Up to a maximum.
Up to a maximum.
up to a maximum?
Okay,
That's all
any
right.
bonding did not change any on,
Well, wait a minute, Mark.
Yes.
I'm still struggling a little bit with this 13, or 14, sorry. The last sentence in C, let's use your 24-inch pine specimen tree.
By caliper measure?
Yeah, whatever that means. If I damage that tree, what this is saying is it's a fine up to $1,000 per day and/or the cost of restoring the site to its original condition. Are we serious about trying to say that somebody's gonna go find a 24-inch specimen pine tree and put it back in there?
no, not 24-inch, but possibly as large as we could get, or maybe a cluster of trees or something back in that, trying to,
So I would question what restoring the site to its original condition or as near as possible to its original condition means then.
You'd say as defined by the, you know, the.
Somebody's gotta,
City arborist, but, but you'd have to add some sort of descriptive words there to do that.
the other thing, and I'm thinking about it in our development as an example, we've got one heck of a lot of trees that are in the rights of way. I mean, the whole main drag through our community is lined with trees for that purpose. The city's not taking on any responsibility for those. They're just reserving the right to go in and prune them if they feel they need to preserve the health. Right?
so you're questioning as far as the trees?
Well, you get into a who shot John situation if something happens to the trees, right? You know, I mean, you're not gonna be able to go find somebody for a tree that's damaged if the city just got through pruning them and arguably did something to them that caused them to be damaged.
Well, that's where I think we could have some, maybe some subjective, inspections on those sites, because, yes, if I go out there and I see a tree and in your front yard that's in the right of way that's dead or been damaged, I'm not gonna fine you unless there's evidence where we know that you did something to impact that tree. Now, there's many ordinances where the homeowner, I think in this one too, where the homeowner is still responsible for those trees as far as the upkeep and pruning and stuff like that. But as far as the removal or destruction of the tree, that's not.
So if one of those trees is in the right of way and it's, let's say it's hanging out into the right of way enough that in my opinion it creates a safety hazard, can I expect that if I call, can I expect the city's gonna come and have that tree pruned? Or is
that.
the city gonna go to the homeowner and ask the homeowner to prune?
I'd have to look to see how that's, through reading of the ordinance, it's really gonna be the homeowner that's responsible for making sure there's clear vision, sight distance,
Okay.
obstruction.
Okay.
That will be the homeowner's responsibility.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Getting back to restoring the site to its original condition, or possible original condition, would the city go out and, I mean, or do you just leave it to the owner to pick a tree and, or to choose a tree?
No, that'd be something we would probably submit, either they, it depends on the disturbance, what actually happened. We may require them to submit a plan within a certain number of days, submit us a plan, how you're gonna fix this for approval. And then we could approve it, or it may be something where I could just say, you need to plant this, and, yeah, make a decision on what needs to be done out there.
So possible original condition is something comparable to what they removed?
Yes, and if it's, like,
Or is defined and approved by the city architect.
That's what you're saying needs to be done.
Yeah, to George's point, you can't necessarily reproduce 25 inch. Pardon?
No, I don't, try not to make so much noise.
Reproduce a 25-inch tree. That
However-
could be, 40 feet tall, but you can to the approval or as defined by the city arborist.
Right.
And meeting expectation is going to be the next best thing. So you need to add some kind of qualifier there that gives you the right of last refusal on what's acceptable. Okay. Any more issues there? And we weren't really intending to go this deep into it, Mark, but bear with us while we're diving in.
Oh, that's fine. Bonding and appeals, I don't know if anybody has any comments on that. If there are any changes there, just gonna be minor there, more administrative issues.
Mark, one thing I noticed on here, after, you've got bonding is section 15, and then you've got appeals, validity. There is no appeals section in here that I saw, is there? Oh, yeah, it's the very bottom, sorry. It just happens to have section 15 on it, too, so, sorry,
Yeah, then,
sorry.
the numbers aren't correct either, so I'm saying that.
I had a question about this.
What section are we on?
I'm trying to remember what I was going to say about bonding, paragraph B.
I don't think it's what you think it is.
It's got nothing to do with dentures.
Okay, never mind. It kept, I wanted to make sure that the last statement would go back to the original bond, and it does. So, never mind. It's more clear than I thought when I read it. Never mind. Thank you.
Okay, and then the appeals and validity.
You ready for all this, Lynn?
Sure.
Your name is sprinkled profusely throughout this ordinance.
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
Okay, we're ready to move on to administrative guidelines now.
Okay.
The tree removal.
I have a question with respect to that section.
Mhm.
I'm troubled by the last sentence in section 1A, 2, or 2B. It's right in the middle of page 11 that says, "It'll be the responsibility of the person or company for hire to apply for the tree removal permit." Why isn't it the responsibility of the property owner?
Tree removal, that's where we're trying to, hate to use the word regulate, but trying to put some regulation on the tree removal companies. A lot of indiscriminate companies companies come in and doing indiscriminate removals. feel like if a tree company is going to do work for hire, then they need to have a permit to do so. And having to have a permit, then that's a way of us capturing and trying to protect the community and the citizens. That they have to have a business license, proof of liability, and workman's comp.
But I think, personally, I think what we're doing there is potentially creating a problem of enforcement if we don't have a good link between the property owner, who's ultimately gonna be the one who's bearing the burden of all the enforcement activity. The guy that is the work for hire, he has no skin in the game here. There's nothing, none of these penalties apply to the guy that's doing the cutting.
No, it will.
Well, I didn't read any of this as applying to them. It applies to the property owner, the person that had the trees cut down.
Does not say, I'd have to look at that and make sure we have it in there that any, I don't think we use the word engaged, but anyone responsible for removing or having removed trees illegally. And so that would incorporate that gives us the option there if we felt like it was the homeowner that pushed it or if it was a tree service company.
No, everything up until now has talked about the property owner.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so my concern, for example, because this happened to me, is I had somebody come in to cut down a tree. I had approval to have the tree cut down. It was a dead tree. While the guy was there, I wasn't even home. He decided that there were 2 more trees that would make the yard look better, so he took them down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to feel like I want to be responsible for that.
No, nor should you be.
But if he went and got a permit to do that, right, maybe, there's just a disconnect there between the guy that's getting the permit not being the property owner, I think. I understand you're trying to regulate what they do,
Mm-hmm.
but don't,
We've struggled with this. I'm open.
no, I know.
I mean,
But it's the
How
person
many
who
other-
gets the permit, that's who is responsible for ensuring that it's done according to ordinance.
If I want to I'm just trying to think through the process. If I want to take down a dead tree in my backyard, before I go engage somebody to do that, I'm going to get approval to take it down. Isn't that where the approval, the permit for tree removal comes from, is getting the approval to take it down?
So you're suggesting, George, that the property owner has to go get the approval,
Right.
but maybe in the approval process, they have to define who it's gonna be, who's gonna take it down?
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with regulating people that are actually doing the removal,
Right.
but to me, getting the authorization to do the removal ought to be the property owner.
I agree completely with that. So how do we connect it to Mark's objective, which is to have it be used, have that homeowner use a regulated,
Well, feels like we're talking about 2 different things.
We
One
are.
is getting an authorization or approval
Yeah.
for removal, and the other is getting the permit to do the work.
well, getting a permit to do the work by an approved,
On an approved-
credentialed
Yeah.
tree removal company.
Well, no, getting the approval to do the work, getting the permit to do the work for an approved removal. The guy that goes to get the permit to remove the tree, the removal permit, there ought to already be an approval on file for that, or they don't give him a permit.
Right.
But to me, the authority to have that taken out ought to be the homeowner.
It almost is, Curtis had his hand up.
Okay.
No, go
I
ahead.
yield the floor to my,
I yield to
More
your hand.
attractive.
I yield to your hand.
I was choosing to ignore Kurt.
Yeah.
So I was gonna nod you, Fred, first.
he just about broke his neck not looking at me. No, in dealing with something generically similar, it had to do with licensed contractors and builders, and according to Georgia criteria, trying to accomplish the same thing, and it was the same issue. Might it make sense to have the application be signed by the homeowner? Because I agree, I think the homeowner ought to be accountable, but require a certified, or whatever the term is, what do you call them?
Approved, just the approved list, is that what you're?
Tree surgeon? You don't call them that.
A certified arborist? is what it's
Certified
called?
arborist,
Mark-
okay,
Mark
what
calls-
else?
Mark calls them
Two different things.
hackers.
No, Claire's just talking to Mark about who is it that you're approving to have it taken down? What do you call the tree company that's taking it down?
That's, you would say a tree service or tree care company, but that's.
Okay,
used
yeah.
very
Removal
loosely.
company.
True, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever it is. I mean, sometimes they come in and do pruning and, but require the approved, but have it be in the name of the homeowner, because they gotta be liable. And then in reality, the tree service would fill it out for them and say, here's the form completed, sign it, maybe even walk it through down here, because they probably know how to do it, and a homeowner does it once in their life and wouldn't, but it's just a thought. I don't want to muck up your
No,
work,
those
but
thoughts were well taken. I think we can incorporate that.
Yeah, I was gonna just do it a dual, where the homeowner came in, said, I had this tree and so forth, and the city approves it. Now they have an approval, so they hire whoever comes in and says, but before you can do this work, you have to have a permit, no different than a builder.
Well, it's no
Yeah.
different than an architect.
Or an
Plans-
architect.
Well, the
Yeah.
architect gets plans approved, and then the builder gets a building permit.
Exactly. So wouldn't it be it sounds laborious, I guess, to have both, but that then secures the city, that the homeowner got approval, he then takes that and gives it to the person he hires that's on the list, or I don't know about the list yet, and then they have to come, as a builder would, and get a permit from the city to take that down. So now you have both control over both worlds.
So you're saying, homeowner gets approval? then-
Well, yeah, what I think happens, Mark, is you take your last sentence in B, and it has to become another section that says that the homeowner has to use an approved credentialed tree removal service. It comes out of, it becomes, instead of being a tag on to paragraph B, it becomes a separate entity where you define who it is and they have to use. Does that make sense?
But, Paul,
Is
I don't have I have a problem with this approved tree removal. I mean, are we gonna have a set of approved, people who can take trees down in Milton? Or they came over here and said, I take trees down, and here's my qualifications, and here's this, and you say, okay, you're approved to do it.
Did I say you're approved?
Mm-hmm.
And what, if he shows there he's got his business license, approved insurance?
Right.
And he would be added to that list
Okay.
of approved companies.
So it can't be a list out there that the city's responsible for.
You're saying it should or should not?
Should not be. I mean, the list is fine, but they have to come here, not hand the list to the homeowner and say, these are the people you can use.
Yeah, so,
Not allowed.
okay, so it's not necessarily an approved list, but the person who's gonna come in and make the application, because you defined it separately in here, has to prove his credentials to you guys before you can come back and take my tree down.
Correct.
So it's not like I have to choose somebody from the list.
Yes.
The person I'm choosing has to come in when they make the application and get approval from you,
Right.
having the appropriate credentials to do so.
And if he's not on the list, and he can't provide everything.
Well, if he's not on the list, it's still okay, provided he can demonstrate the credentials to you necessary to meet your
Well,
requirements.
that's what I was gonna say, if he's not on the list and he doesn't, meet the requirements there, then he doesn't do any work
That's fine.
legally.
I have
Right.
no problem.
Yeah, and of course, the homeowner's still gonna be naive, he's gonna come back and say, yep, got the approval. Homeowner's gonna say, okay, probably they should be expecting a document to.
Yep.
That's where we'll take, to educate the homeowners too on,
Yeah.
when they come in for the approval,
Approval.
make sure that they get written, just so that they see the permit.
The problem will arise if we have a big tornado and all that, as I went through at the lake. I mean, I had a guy come up and charge your insurance company $4,000, take a tree off of our cabin, $4,000.
Big tree?
Yeah, plus it was a wild cherry. It
Yeah.
worth, when the guy cut it all up, which was probably worth $9,000.
Ah,
But, I mean, they weren't approved, they took off, you know. So, that's where I think the problem lies,
Yeah.
but hopefully we don't have to have it.
well, and I mean, you're talking about downside risk is death. It's not,
Yeah.
minor issues.
Well, remember Dunwoody.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Well, I had a question a little earlier in that paragraph, if we're off the certification.
I think we're finished with that. First.
Okay. We're gonna go through this one word at a time, right? I wanted to be clear on the reasoning on these counts and sizes qualifying the need for a request. Is that the same as it was with Fulton or different? And what was the logic behind six of any size, of any size, or a single tree of 8 inches or more in diameter? Am I getting that right?
Fulton do not have any of those requirements. That's something the committee added.
That's what I thought. So what was the logic behind the numbers?
Reviewing various ordinances throughout the state and throughout the country, that's where we made one mistake, was reviewing too many ordinances, just got
Yeah.
confusing, very confusing.
Yeah.
But that was numbers showing different samples of different ordinances. That's what they.
Can you recall what kind of a profile of a place this would fit from your research? I'm just curious.
You talking about like what other communities would
Yeah.
have that?
This sort of
There, and I can't think of the Flat cities in particular, but there are some, we have a tree ordinance manual that the Georgia Forestry Commission put together several years ago. They reviewed all the ordinances and different requirements and things. And there were several, maybe not a lot, but there were several city ordinances that had a limited amount of trees you could take out, 6 or 12. Peachtree City has 3. You can only take 3
Yeah.
trees out. I
but
think.
the size, the 8-inch diameter.
The 8-inch, that's something that I informed the committee that, for instance, Sandy Springs, their requirement is, criteria starts at 18-inch. 18-inch is what sets it off there. 8-inch, personally myself, it's 6 trees of 8-inch caliber. That's going to keep somebody very busy doing inspections on that.
Well, I didn't read it that way. That's part of my question.
Again, not to pick at definitions, but the DBH for Curtis and me are completely different.
Yeah, I realize that.
He's not laughing.
Anyway, I wasn't clear on those 2 filters. And then I've had a occasion to be involved in something where people, like George said earlier, that you try to find loopholes, where people argued incessantly. There was a 6-inch standard, but it was not clear how that was measured, and you had people doing things like cutting the branches, going out on the branches till it got to be 6 inches and severing it all the way around, and then liberal interpretation, or going down onto the tree diameter until it got to 6 inches and people that'll do that'll do anything, but it sort of begged the question. I guess you got to define this pretty darn clearly, because someone, even if it's an honest oversight, at least it ought to be clear enough to say, well, yeah, when I said 8 inches, here's what I meant. At the base of the tree,
What does say that,
sometimes
actually?
you see X feet up,
Breast
Yeah,
high.
There's somewhere in here I read. it
4
says-
feet up. There's some
No, it's X
standard
number of inches.
measurement. You probably know what it
no.
is.
It's DBH.
DBH.
That was my point. It's-
Breast high.
Right,
But
right.
that's an undefined term. Why not just
That's
6
what-
feet off the ground, you know?
See,
Right, I mean, you got Smurf measure, and then
Right,
you got
yeah.
human.
That's right, that's what he.
But there's
that's
another,
what he
there's
did.
another
Wasn't
part
listening.
mark where it defines the measurement to be X number of inches above the ground line thing.
That's the caliper. Caliper is usually a measurement that you use for trees that are planted. As you go to the nursery, you buy a tree, you're gonna buy a 2-inch or 4-inch caliper tree. And that's usually measured about 6 inches above the ground. The
Yeah,
diameter-
6 inches above the ground,
yeah,
right.
The diameter of the
about
tree
chest
is
high.
what's,
About chest high, right.
Yeah, but you're still not finishing that. What is caliper?
caliper is the,
Laying down.
Isn't it the diameter?
is the diameter as
Yeah.
measured 6
Okay.
inches above the
The
ground.
word diameter needs to be in there somewhere.
Okay, but that's,
We're not gonna solve this here. I was just curious. You don't want it to become an onerous problem or something ridiculous in practice, but, I like the idea that you guys
We
are,
also don't want Mark getting in
Quantifying.
fistfights.
So,
Right.
to that point, are we saying that DBH should be 6 inches
No.
from the ground?
No,
Or
it should be more
diameter
like-
breast height is a arboriculture term, 4.5 feet above the ground,
Okay.
DBH.
Okay,
4.5 feet. that's
4.5
it.
feet.
Okay, so that's obviously got to be defined.
I'd have to stand on a telephone.
It is defined in definitions.
It is in
4.5.
there?
Yes,
So then.
number
where did I
11,
read the other
or
measurement?
DBH, I don't have it spelled out, I just have DBH.
Like 12
Diameter
inches.
breast height is a standard measure of tree size.
Not
The tree's
decibels per
existing on
hour.
site, and its tree trunk diameter measured in inches at a height of 4.5 feet above the ground.
Great. So that was in the.
In the definition.
Definition.
Yes, sir.
Good, great.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
I have an educational question that maybe Curtis can answer. I don't know what overstory and understory mean.
I have an answer for that, but it's probably not technically correct.
Curtis
I mean, is it
typically
above-
overstories us every time we have a meeting.
Is that
Is he-
like above the eave and below the eve?
Is he talking again?
That's pretty much how it works.
What does
You
it mean?
you
Well,
probably,
your overstories are usually your canopy trees, your taller growing trees. Your understory trees, the trees that are gonna grow in the shade.
Yeah.
Like redbuds, dogwoods, sourwoods, things like that, that need the filtered sun or shade.
Okay.
very good.
Thanks, Curtis.
Always trying to help.
One issue, I don't know if we're getting down that far, if people are jumping at timber harvest, that comes up all the time. Timber harvesting, we cannot require a permit for timber harvesting. The only thing we can require there is a notification if more than 2 acres are being harvested. If that's the case, we can't stop them from harvesting the property.
Within what time period?
Through the Georgia legislation, I don't believe there is a time period on that.
So is it 2 acres can be harvested within any time period and, does that matter?
I don't think that there's a limit.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a limit.
So as long as I do a
Either
quarter of an
wild or
acre at a
brown.
time, you can't do anything about it.
Well, what we can do that is clear cutting, if they clear cut under 2 acres, then we could require a land disturbance, or no, that would require approval from the director.
So it's, if they clear cut 2 acres within any time period,
Right.
okay.
The clear cut would have to be under 2 acres with approval of the director. Over 2 acres, it would require a land disturbance permit.
So in the case of the guy in red and
Guy in there? Oh, yeah, the greenhouse guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
he would have had to, he would not have,
Yeah.
right about the requirements.
Yeah. Just an observation, Mark. One observation, towards the back end, it looks like a lot of the things that were put in here were kind of cut and pasted from other standards. So there's a lot of references to sections that aren't appropriate. There, you know, for example, at the very back, it talks about, talks about when a complete application is filed under section 4. Section 4 talks about density or something. It has nothing to do with filing an application. And the next section says when a completed application is filed under section 5, and section 5 has nothing to do with filing applications.
I'm sorry, George, where are you?
I'm
Toward the back.
Page
I'm
25.
at the very
Oh,
back.
okay, okay.
The other thing, again, just is not, there's an awful lot of stuff towards the back end in here that, to me, doesn't need to be in here. For example, section 10 talks about landscape strip and buffer standards, and there are, on that one page, there are 9 standards. 5 of them don't even say anything about trees or have anything to do with trees. I mean, the landscape strip and buffer standards are already in the zoning ordinance, right?
Mhm.
We don't need to repeat them all here, unless there's something new that's relevant specifically to trees. I mean, saying that no permanent structures are permitted with the landscape strips, no dumpsters, detention facilities. Nice statement, but it's got nothing to do with tree removal or tree protection. It just seems to be out of place in this ordinance, is all I'm saying.
Well, was it your intention, Mark, to, for example, on number 6, where it sets a caliper minimum on a parking lot, landscape island, and that could have been sucked right out of our other standards.
Yes, that is in zoning.
But at least it's relevant.
Yeah, it is relevant, but was that the intention, was just to reproduce that here, so it's easier to find, so they wouldn't have to go to the zoning ordinance to see that? Or-
There are numerous ordinances that do combine landscape requirements and stuff like that. Some is separate.
We run the risk of, and this gets back to the original form over substance, we run the risk of creating an editorial problem downstream. In my opinion, the more we sprinkle these things, we're better off, if that's all we want to do, is just put a reference in here to that section of the zoning ordinance where this shows up and leave it at that. Because that way, if you change that ordinance where it's cited the one time, the rest of these references never have to change.
Okay, and if there was anything in here that's not in the ordinance, then we could
Then add that here,
submit
yeah,
that,
yeah.
or ask
But
it to be
anything
changed in
that's
zoning.
literally repeated from the other ordinance, just make a reference to the other ordinance and say it's
Okay.
included by reference.
May I ask a question on an example? And this is probably moot, like the timber harvesting. I don't think we're going to see too many of those transactions. But what if someone wanted to clear a large portion of land to create pasture?
Did you say for a pasture?
To create pasture.
For what purpose? I mean, just, come on, so that's
Yeah,
where-
horses or
horse farm.
cows.
that's an agricultural use.
Yep. I thought I saw that, but I was
Section
just,
5D,
I was looking back
Section
at this
5
and I couldn't.
Section 5D on page 6 says land from which the removal of trees is shown to be necessary for bona fide agricultural purposes
Yeah,
where the duration of use are exempt.
okay. I thought I had seen that. I expected it to be in that section, but it wasn't. Enough
That's where
said.
we run into some issues, being the agricultural
Yeah, yeah.
use. It's
Right.
agricultural
No,
zone, but,
but-
they, it's just, it's hard to tie that one in a little bit.
It makes sense for it to be separate.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I didn't see any, or maybe I missed it, a reference to utilities. The act of what the utility companies do in terms of trimming and topping for power lines, placing of power lines in the way of trees.
Pruning or removing
saw
of
that,
trees within the
yeah.
right of way by utility companies for maintenance or utility wires or pipelines is exempt.
What about
So we had no-
placement of a cell tower?
Where is that, George?
It's 5C on page 6.
To that point, Mark, it just occurred, I think it's called, I can't remember the company, been working at Alpharetta, Hopewell Road, all there. They must have taken down 14 pine trees at Hopewell
Well, yeah.
Place Drive,
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, remember that big debate.
at
And-
least.
And what, the trees are in the right of way, or they're in their easement?
Absolutely.
And they're allowed to do that?
Yep.
You have other trees up in Dinsmore that caused, or North Valley, in that area, people called about that last year, I believe. Sony went in and did some pruning on the trees, under the utility lines.
So
when you first do that type of pruning, yes, it looks bad, because you kind of sheared it off. But there are about 3 different ways you can prune around utility lines, which is an acceptable practice. And what they did, and it's just like a haircut, you know, you get it's very noticeable the day you get home. A couple days later, you don't even notice it anymore hardly.
I don't even notice it.
Well, I was biting my tongue. But, you know, you give the tree a year to grow back, and it's going to have a natural look. It's going to look fine.
You've been to my house. You probably don't remember this, but I got like a quarter of a mile under power lines, and Sawney comes in once every couple of years and just buzzes it. You know, vertical on the sides, flat on the bottom.
That explains a lot. Curtis has been living under power lines.
And within a property like yours.
It's okay. I keep aluminum foil on my head so I protect
The aluminum foil hat he wears in the car when he drives.
But
I just had a
Within the site,
picture of it.
within the site like that, they're probably not going to be as careful. They're just going to buzz them. But
Yeah.
again, you get along the roads.
I didn't mean
so
to
they do a little bit.
distract the conversation, but I checked along to, I mean, they got the authority to do that.
Yeah.
And
Well, if it's in the easement, they also have the right to remove the trees, period.
And that's what
Yeah.
they did on Hopewell Road.
Yes.
But I will say, they were in trouble coming off of Hopewell Place Drive. You couldn't see to the right because of.
I mean, while they were doing the work?
No,
Oh, when they were.
before.
themselves.
So now that they took them down, they stumped ground, they put pine straw back in. I mean, did an absolutely beautiful job. But the whole time they were doing it, I was wondering how they got approval of that. And then,
I went out to the neighbor called, and I went out
Well,
there and
remember,
addressed
that was a huge city council debate if we were going to allow them to remove them.
out there.
Yeah.
yeah.
but the one, if you want to see one that's the top, you know, the location that we approved that, no, we didn't approve on Highway 9 in front of the storage. They're going to build the furniture.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went in there, and you could see it. It's very obvious. And pine was probably, I don't know, 1824 caliber. And they cut it off at about 6 feet.
DBH.
Yeah, 6 feet.
You gotta add that
No,
in there.
they did. They cut it, they just cut it off at 6 feet. And there, it's right on that property. It said, I mean, it's the ugliest looking thing you ever saw. So, and that is Milton.
Well, not meaning to digress here, but you have the, I'm talk about that, to give you an example, behind the old, what's the store there on Thompson? The old,
Oh,
Oh, the,
Yeah.
that little store there, back on Thompson, first house or two on the right there. It's a huge tree.
You're talking about White's?
What's that?
You're talking about White's
he's
store on
talking
the corner,
about,
Thompson and,
you know, the one that we debated.
No, the one that we,
oh,
Thompson and
Chadwick's?
Hopewell?
Yeah, Chadwick.
Chat, yeah.
Yeah, chat.
But as you're going down, just as you turn on Thompson there, it's the first, second house on the right, it's a huge, huge tree. And the guy had topped out. And the homeowner was, oh, the tree's gonna fall on my house, is the city gonna pay for it if it falls? The tree looked perfectly healthy. And, although there's a question if a tree growing in an urban environment is not perfectly healthy anyway. But the tree did seem like a good, sound, solid tree. Tree company went in there, oh, we're doing some pruning. It's gonna grow back. Cut it back to all the stubs, 2 years. It leafed out for about a month. The next year, next month it was all brown. Drive by there now, the tree's already decaying, rotting. So is that tree a hazard? It is now. You know, it was not then.
Yeah.
But and the homeowner, you know, he was going by what the tree company told him to do. And they said, yeah, this will help the tree. So anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to digress on that.
Oh, that's all right.
One thing I know that will come up is the specimen tree requirements, and I'm not meaning to jump around, I just don't know.
Where are you now, Mark?
That is, did I get that on this one?
Page
Yes,
17.
section,
Page 17.
yeah, let's see, this section 5, here's, the existing ordinance as it is now, we, classify 10-inch caliber understory as a specimen tree. That's your dogwoods, redbuds, and firewoods. Honestly, do not find too many 10-inch caliber redbuds, firewoods, or dogwoods out there. So, the committee felt like we could reduce that to 8-inch caliber understory trees. The large hardwoods remain the same.
So that was dropped from Fulton's?
Fulton initially had it as an 8-inch, then they increased it to a 10-inch. I think it's more correct being an 8-inch. So you just don't, I don't find too many 10-inchers. And dogwoods, they're not going to grow that large anyway. They do have a shorter lifespan.
Right.
But we felt like 8-inch was an appropriate size for a specimen.
I thought we weren't allowing sweet gums anymore.
That's another argument there. But hardwoods, we're keeping it 27-inch caliber trees. Beech trees, 24-inch. We felt like that was appropriate.
Mark, I don't understand from that chart the purpose of the first two lines being separated.
You're talking about large hardwood?
Yeah, you got large hardwoods, and one's 24 and one's 27, and then you've got examples.
Mhm.
So you're saying any beech that's 24 or greater is going to be considered a specimen?
Yes. A beech is not going to,
Is- Huh?
the beech is not as large, will not grow as large as what some of the other trees do.
But I mean, is that a distinction without a difference, that 3 inches?
Yeah. On the beech tree, yes.
It's a distinction, so it really doesn't matter? Do we
No,
need a separate category?
I think he answered it the other way.
Yeah.
way.
I mean, why not just say large hardwoods?
It does have to make a difference.
I'm sorry, what's that?
What you meant was it does make a difference.
Yeah, oh, yes, yes.
Why not just say large hardwoods are all of those hardwood species over 24 inches and leave it at that?
So you want to go with oaks, hickories, poplars?
No, I'm just saying, it would simplify it. To me, having those two categories where there's 3 inch different and, some are this and some are that, seems like a distinction without a difference. The large softwood, the large hardwood, and the small native flowering seem like they're distinct categories. That's just me, never mind.
Well, I think
You're
it's,
saying just to do 27?
Well, I would just say combine them.
Sure.
I mean,
you look at how we've oftentimes taken a conservative approach, that certainly does offer a conservative assessment of that, and you're saying anything over 24 inches, including those oak, hickory, poplar, and sweet gum that may not have otherwise been considered specimen, are now considered specimen at 24 inches. You don't have to wait till they're at 27. Simplifies the chart. It certainly sort of simplifies the job.
See, to me, the problem.
Anything over 24 is now considered a specimen, and it's hardwood or softwood. Because it would include softwood pine. But you're saying now it's to be 30, could be considered a specimen at 24.
See, the problem I guess I have is if those are really only meant to be examples, it doesn't fit in this context, right? I mean,
Do you see what we're saying, Mark?
I think so. Maybe I'm just not agreeing with you there.
What we're saying is you've imposed a harder standard on yourself than we're suggesting you might want to do. If you want to simplify the standard by simply saying anything over 24 inches, hardwood or softwood, to include hardwood such as oak, hickory, poplar, sweet gum, beech, and softwood, which would include pine. Anything over 24 inches would now be considered a specimen.
let me try it a different way. I mean, again, we're talking about loopholes, right? I mean, would you consider a fir to be a softwood?
Yes.
Okay. So if I look at this and I have a fir tree that's 32 inches in diameter, is that a specimen tree?
Yes.
According to this, it's not, because it's not a pine tree.
Okay. I think the reason we didn't have that, because you're not going to find a 30-inch caliber fir tree around here.
George's growing.
Except on George's property.
So I think what we listed here were trees that were common, that we were liable to find.
I mean, all I'm saying is, to me, there's a generic definition of what hardwood and softwood is, and any tree, regardless of size, is going to fit into either one of those categories.
And then again, your softwood, tulip poplar is a softwood.
Then why is it listed as a large hardwood here?
But it's just
Well, I would argue that to the death if I cut down a 27-inch specimen tree and you tried to call it a specimen tree, it wouldn't fit here.
If it's called a softwood, if it's actually the softwood, it's maybe
Okay.
considered a softwood in the practice, but a hardwood. But in essence, it's a fast-growing tree. Any of your fast-growing trees are softwood. Your pine tree, which.
Curtis had his hand up, by
I'm
the way.
sorry.
I didn't mean to cut him off.
Well, you were in the middle of your thing. You had to wait.
That's all right. He wanted to weigh in.
I think I'm gonna speculate that these numbers were originally derived based on all kinds of normal curves and densities, and that they're not arbitrary. That probably varies from location to location. I mean, it's not gonna be exactly precise, but that you knew the percentage of trees above that and below that and so on and so forth. But I think the major value for this isn't in going back and assessing damage, but in coming up with recompense, right? Like what you did at the Kings Ridge site, and I assume thousands and thousands of others, is, walk it before a stone was overturned, inventory the specimen trees by type, by size, and came up with a recompense requirements, and then it's not that big a deal. I mean, he knows the stuff. I mean, Jennifer and I are out there. It's like, is that a tree? Yeah, it's okay. But anyway, isn't that right? I mean, maybe there are damages and penalties too, but this is for your use, I think. Am I off base?
Yeah, that's why we get our recompense for
Yeah.
the removal of the specimens. The present standard is on a pine tree at 24-inch caliber. I can probably find a 24-inch caliber on almost anybody's site.
Yeah.
So they're not that uncommon. We looked at other jurisdictions. Alpharetta, there's a 30-inch pine. Canton is a 30-inch pine. Sandy Springs is 30-inch. Forsyth is 18-inch.
Is that right?
Roswell is 24-inch. Yeah,
That's probably a typo. It's probably 180.
Well, I think on Forsyth, I think they have some things like this, but I think enforcement is a problem they have.
Yeah.
I think they have some strict
Yeah,
standards,
right.
but I think they have a problem enforcing it.
Well, if they don't, the DNR does, so I can assure
Right.
you that.
Right.
But the committee just,
Yes.
they looked at that and they just thought, again, 24-inch was such a common tree, and I run into that a lot. So you have somebody with, you're gonna I have to pay recompense for this 24-inch pine tree, and we just felt like the specimen size ought to be increased from that. Because the larger the pine tree, really, if you get up to a 30-inch caliber pine tree, you've got a pretty good sturdy tree. Because this can beat the elements and the environment and everything. Most of the time I've seen trees that large, they're good and solid. A lot of the times when I see a 24-inch, they're not. So there are two 48-inch caliber pine trees I ran into in the past that I would have no problem having those next to my house.
Yeah.
I think the larger the pines are, the sturdier they are.
Okay. So we're offering a chance to, in our minds, to simplify the chart, and you're arguing, you think the definition as written is important?
With all of our arborist knowledge.
I will, and like I said, I do appreciate those comments. I'll run that by the committee, and because I don't want to be the one to say, hey, this is what we have to do. This is the committee's decision, and we'll pass that on to them. What y'all's concerns, what your comments are, and let them make that decision.
And I think to follow up on that, and it goes back to a point George made earlier, I think the ordinance and anything that supports it should be written for the citizens. Shouldn't be written for the arborists and the experts. So a lot of what's here makes a whole lot of sense to you for a whole lot of different reasons and helps you in your job. But me as the layperson, I go to the ordinance to see what I can do and I can't do, and I see all this, and all of a sudden I'm confused. And I do something that gets me in trouble because I'm not the expert. But I should be able to go to a plainly worded ordinance and say, okay, I can do this, or I can't do this, or I've got to get a permit for this or for that.
That was one of the main comments from the different jurisdictions on this tree ordinance survey, was making it very easy to read. A lot of communities responded to that. It was tough to get it in that type of form where just anyone could understand it. And it is a challenge.
Mark, not to put you on the spot, but that section you said earlier that said that had to be in here in order to be able to qualify for that program, the section on protection and care of public trees,
Mhm.
is there a timeline we're trying to meet to qualify? I mean,
We've
is there an
already done it
application
through the
to?
other, there was an amendment to the current ordinance that
So
was passed by the city council.
That's what happened in December, didn't it?
Yes.
Right.
They
and
added
so-
that section to the existing ordinance
Mhm.
Correct.
as written here?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, and this is still, we're working on this. If you have some comments you want us to address there.
Mark, I have a question on page 15, section 5, the standards for replacement recompense trees. And this is a minimum standard here, is that the way I'm to take that? We as a planning commission, when we bump into something where we're requiring a recompense, we could condition it as could the city council at a higher minimum requirement than a 2-inch caliper.
That is that's been a source of debate here and there too. 2-inch caliper is pretty much the smallest size we're going to accept. And
Right.
that's mainly would be for like landscape strips and parking islands. We really don't need or want anything larger than that because you have minimal root growing space in that area, or in your parking islands and some of your strips. So 2-inch caliper we felt like is sufficient within the site. We think along the roads, which a lot of the zoning would require maybe 4-inch for landscape strips along the highways, along the roads anyway. For recompense, 4-inch caliper tree is what's required to recompense. If you take out a specimen tree, it's automatic that you have to plant 4-inch caliper trees. If they want to go with 2-inch caliper, they can go with 2-inch, and if it's approved, we can accept 2 inches, just twice as many. So if you have to plant 24-inch caliper trees, if you want to go with 2 inch instead, then you have to plant 40 of them.
Okay.
So it gives us a lot, not as much the canopy as quick, but it gives us a number of trees. As far as the size of the trees, a 2-inch caliper tree is going to establish itself faster than a 4-inch caliper tree. The girth, it's not going to get the girth as quick, but you can plant a 2-inch caliper tree next to 4 or 5-inch caliper tree out along the landscape strip in a couple of years. The canopy, everything looks about the same. Because the root system established itself so much quicker, it has less stress, and once that root system gets established, then all the energy can go up to the upper portion of the tree. You plant a 4-inch caliper tree, it's going to take a little bit more stress, and it's going to take a little bit longer for that root system to get established, and then start putting its nutrients up to the top of the tree. You take a 6-inch caliper, 6-inch can take, I wish I could remember the years on it, it's unbelievable, comparing between the 2-inch caliper and 6-inch. But what you have to consider there too, on a 6-inch, is the environment, the droughts, rain, stuff like that. 6-inch caliper tree, yes, would look nice, but if we required everybody in front of Target, every tree in front of Target to be a 6-inch caliper tree, how long would it be before they're out there taking them up, a certain number of them up and replanting? Excuse me. And I know people say, well, it's not being maintained properly. No, 6-inch is just, it's not going to establish itself as quickly, as readily as a 4-inch. It's not saying a 6-inch will die. It can survive. But the 2 and the 4-inch are a good starting point, and there may be some times where a 6-inch would be appropriate. There may be some times where I would require a 6-inch. You know, if they were in a penalty phase, they did something illegally. I want a quicker. I want quicker establishment here. I want an 8-inch caliper tree.
Right.
8-inch is going to be hard to manage. You need to make sure you have it transplanted correctly, everything done right. Out here maintaining it for however long it takes, 2 years or so. So if somebody is having to be responsible for something like that, they're going to do a little bit better job maintaining it.
Okay, great.
That's
Thank you.
good, that's helpful for us going forward.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else? Another big typo Mark, that caught my eye was on page 20, number 5, soil compaction.
I suspect Mark's gonna read it for typos after,
Oh,
That was just pretty blatant, that one.
I tell you, as many times as we sat in our meetings and made changes, and I mean, it's my fault here, you know, but come in.
rather
Is this something
rather
more-
have substance than, cosmetic
Well,
perfection.
we present something this week, we all agree to it, come back next week, and then we'll change it a little bit. And so just constantly just trying to keep up with what the changes are. I say, and I thought I was doing spell check on a regular basis. Obviously, I was not. But
we're not supposed to.
every meeting, I could have something and come back and we have to change something. And like I said, that's no fault other than my own.
No problem.
All right, do you consider this courtesy reviewed at this point? Have we met the expectation?
Are we courteous?
Well, I can spell. It does not look like it, but I fat finger a lot of, I got little fingers, but I can fat finger better than,
It's a courtesy.
about the best of anybody.
I think it's been good. I think it's given a lot of good
Oh, yeah.
suggestions and thoughts.
Get a
So what are
bunch
the
of people
steps
that
now?
that don't know anything about trees telling you how you do your job.
Those have been never landed.
So Mark, this goes back to committee.
Pardon me?
This goes back to the committee now to assess some of the points that we discussed tonight. What happens next?
Design review board, and then after that, work session.
Design review board with assessment of the things that we offered this evening already implemented?
It will need to be, yes.
Okay.
We need to expedite
So
that.
they would see that with the benefit of the
They're
board.
gonna actually not see it this upcoming, but they're not gonna see it until
March.
very beginning of March.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I was finished.
Yeah, just a general question. I assume we'll see this again, but maybe not until it really is teed up for prime time or whatever. Did you guys give any thought to, and I'll stop saying this at some point, but did you guys give any thought to Milton's different than Fulton, Milton's different than Roswell, Milton's different than Johns Creek, et cetera? Certain density recompense requirements ought to be different. Did you? I mean, and I'm not leading you in that way. I'm just curious if anybody had the mindset that said, you know what, we're more rural. We want to be more rural. We want to retain that as the inevitable occurs, and use different criteria. And I didn't even know that about them. Pretty plant savvy, but I didn't know that about the 2-inch tree versus the 4-inch tree. So, you know, there's so much science that I'm not aware of. But
No, we did look at surrounding communities, and just trying to think, can we do something different? And how much really can you do different as far as just requiring more?
we're requiring more. That's what it would be. I was just curious if
But I think
If
it
you
is
had-
different. Don't you think, like, if you've given that a comparison of Sandy Springs versus Milton, even though they were under the same ordinance, they're two totally different places and two totally different goals,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
So if you looked at Sandy Springs ordinance as it stands now and what we're doing, they're two totally different ordinances because you're looking at two totally different places.
well, that was the point of my question.
Right,
Yes,
that's true, right?
So, yeah, Sandy Springs, you know, it's more residential, commercial, and smaller parcels. Up here, we got a lot of acreage. And and there's that balance too, trying to maintain that rural character. You have people that want the horse farms, and then the one they want to clear a pasture, or clear a wooded site to put a horse pasture in. And
Yeah.
so you're trying to maintain a horse get a horse pasture, but you're taking the trees out to do it, so it's.
Yeah, I understand. That's what was behind my question before, but, and I don't want to belabor it, I was just curious if y'all said, you know what, we're going to have a higher standard or a lower standard or anything,
Well,
just because we're different. And
they
if
felt-
not, that's fine, I just
It
just
felt like the
curious.
permit that's something that's not, a lot of communities don't have the tree removal permit for residential. And that's,
Good example.
You know,
So,
that's-
so
that-
a higher level of regulation, I know you don't want to use that word, but control, let's
Right.
call it.
but I mean, there are very, very few communities that do require
Yeah.
permit for residential, no removals.
Nice
Now,
job.
doesn't Sandy Springs, like if you're building a house and there's a tree, isn't there just such intense trying to preserve the trees, right, what's there?
Yes, because, well, you have your residential lots, they're smaller lots, so what tree is on the lot?
You have to do whatever you
Yeah,
can to save
you have to do
it.
what you can to save it, you know.
Right.
They don't have the option like we have up here, you got a lot and you have 50 trees on your lot, you know, like Sandy Springs, you may just have one tree.
One last typo in your table of contents.
Table of contents.
This should say Milton.
What did I put there?
Yeah.
It says the Fulton County Tree Preservation.
Oh, okay. I thought it would be a typo like the letter A.
No. What are all the appendices going to be used for? Different examples of trees?
Yes, it's just, well, guideline, pruning techniques, mulching techniques around the bed of the trees.
Are they more educational kinds of things?
Yes, yes, and that's where, and that is, we do see that in a lot of ordinances too.
Really?
They just have that type of stuff.
Really?
And that is one thing I've talked about, you're talking about some of this being in the tree ordinance where it might should be elsewhere. You know, we're trying to keep from having to have a tree ordinance and a landscape ordinance. And so that's one reason we're trying to combine some of this in here, but I do see your point there too, just refer back to what's in zoning.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Hang on 1 second.
Nice job, Mark.
Well, thank you.
It was very
One,
interesting.
one last question, Mark.
Yes, sir.
It's really short, real short. But a question I asked before about invasive species trees. So you never considered them to be anything other than trees, protected under all the conditions that you have in there. And I'm thinking there's a certain species of magnolia, which is invasive, and which does procreate quite well and gets into hardwood forests and destroys hardwood stands of hardwoods. So if I had that particular one in my yard, which I think I do, I've got to come before you and say, I've got this magnolia, can I cut this thing down? It's protected under the ordinance.
Well, roughly, just, how many do you have, roughly?
It's just one.
Okay, so say and it's probably under 6 inch.
Nah,
Under
it's
8
bigger,
inch.
it's much bigger than that.
Oh, is it bigger than
Yeah.
8 inch?
Yeah.
It can't be a magnolia, they don't grow bigger than 8 inches.
Yeah, this one does.
It turns out if you drill a hole in them and put herbicide,
That, you know, you can do some, well, even selective thinning to help the rest of the trees grow. I mean, still that's, well, again, if I can
Are
get.
you
to the
looking
point-
for a loophole?
Well, well, that's what it's like the thinning, but it's still removing a tree over the required size there.
Well, and that was just my question. I'm not going to do anything with it, but was there any consideration given to the idea of invasive species as being,
I think that falls
handled
under
different.
I think it falls in the definition of a hazard
I
tree
think
because it
so.
runs the risk of
I think
creating
so, too.
damage to property.
And same with the tree that has been mentioned before, which I did have somebody call a couple weeks ago, asking if they could remove a Bradford pear. And I told them the only way you can remove that one is if you remove all of them on site.
yeah,
Bradford pears,
it's like aspen.
they've only been around for about 35 years. Bradford pears,
10 years.
the life of the Bradford pears lifespan is only about 30, 35 years, if it makes it that long. It's very fast growing, very weak wood. It splits. You can go by after any storm. You can go by and you can see Bradford pears split.
Yeah.
They are probably one of the worst trees to use in the landscape now, and that is
But go back to what you said. They asked if they could remove a Bradford pear, and you said only if you remove them all?
Funny.
He was being,
Right.
No, I understand now.
Yes, I mean, yes, get that.
well, that's a good answer, because I got one that's going in the front yard.
I mean, it,
Because it's split.
Get it before it gets to be 6
Oh,
inches.
No,
it goes way of the Leyland cypress. It grows fast. It's inexpensive, and all the landscapers used it. And the Bradford did have a flower that everybody liked, but not realizing, again, that it's just not. not a
Hold
good
the dog.
It's a weak tree.
Yeah.
I've got a half a dozen of them. They send out these awful runners. I mean, they come up 20 feet away, you know, and I mean, woody shoots, so
But
awful.
the cedar waxwings use them as food in the springtime.
That's exactly why I've left mine in
We had a
place.
motion.
Yeah, this- yeah, we
This
haven't-
is the discussion. The motion was made by George, it was seconded by,
Me?
by Curtis. We had ample discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, adjourned.